Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Integrated Corridor Management Rural and Urban Application. My name is Neelu Parvinashtiani and I will help facilitate today's webinar. Today's webinar is a joint effort in planning and delivery by AASHTO CTS Operations Strategies Working Group and the National Operations Center of Excellence, or NOCO. Before I cover the logistics, I just wanted to share a word about NOCO. At NOCO, we offer a variety of resources to support the transportation systems management and operations community. So on your screen right now, on the bottom left side, you see the useful links box where you can browse through our knowledge center by clicking on there, or subscribe to our YouTube channel for webinar recording, or alternatively subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter for webinar and major TISMO announcements. Now I'll cover a few logistics for today's webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be shared after the webinar through webinar video recording, and also all the presentation slides will also be shared on NOCO website. All the webinar attendees' phone lines are muted by default, but we'd like you to stay engaged by using the chat bot for comments and questions. We have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. So as the presenters go through their slides and as the questions come to your mind, just type them in the question discussion pod and we'll cover those at the end of the webinar by reading each question out loud one at a time and then directing it at our presenters to answer them. Lastly, let me introduce the moderator for today's webinar, and I'll hand it off to him after that. Our moderator today is Brent Kane from Arizona DOT, who serves as the co-chair of the Operations Strategy Working Group and the Division Director for the Transportation System Management and Operations Division within Arizona DOT. Brent will help us with the moderating today's webinar. So with that, I'll hand it over to Brent to start us off with the webinar. Brent?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Nilo, and good afternoon and good morning to some of you. So appreciate the participation and joining and understanding integrated corridor management and some of the things that are happening throughout the U.S. As Nilo had noted, this is part of the Committee on Transportation Systems Operations, or CTSO, and this is the working group on operations strategies. So again, appreciate you guys taking your time out there to listen to what we have to offer. So we actually have 4 speakers. Myself will be presenting on what we're doing here in Arizona. We also have Matthew Carlisle from North Carolina DOT, Sabrat from Maryland DOT, and also Natalie Becker from North Central Texas Council of Government. So with that, I guess I'll lead it off with the first presentation, and then I'll go through order of the other presenters and give them a very brief introduction and let them go. I would ask that maybe we hold off and let's get through all the presentations first, and then feel free to type in questions, as Nilo stated, in the discussion pod, question pod online. Or if you want later, we'll definitely open up the floor to questions to any of us. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started on mine. It's not going to be real lengthy because we're at the early phases. Just to let everybody know, in collaboration with the Maricopa Department of Transportation here, ADOT, we were awarded last fall the ATC MTD, or the Advanced Transportation and Congestion Management Technologies Deployment Grant, the $6 million grant. We were awarded that last fall. We've been in the process of essentially getting that rolling. There's a lot of, for those that have gotten grants like this, there's a lot of administration work behind the scenes, plus we have a lot of agencies involved on this. So there's a lot of upfront work that has to be done. One second. There we go. So this is just a list of the partnerships that we have. It's pretty inclusive. This corridor stretches throughout the Phoenix metro area, but we're really looking at it from a transportation system as a whole. You know, how can we utilize the freeways and the arterial system to really maximize the flow? Even though the Phoenix area is a fairly new city per se, we have a pretty robust system in that we have not only the freeway system, but a pretty extensive arterial system that's essentially laid out on the section or 1 mile grid. And those arterials, if you've been here in the Phoenix, they're typically about 6 lanes. So we can really move traffic on the arterial sides as well too. But we really want to look at the technology and really how to develop and provide drivers with better, more accurate information so they can make better travel decisions, especially if there's incidents. So again, we're just at the early throes. The grant is a 4-year grant. So we're at the phase 1 essentially, and then we'll go through the design and implementation of that. Again, we're developing the con-ops essentially of this. This screen actually illustrates the corridor in itself. State Route 101 essentially loops around one of our loops in the Phoenix area. It's approximately 61 miles in length, and it really connects a lot of the residents, tourists to key events, educational institutions, and other freeways in our arterial system. And like other cities, we're experiencing increased congestion and delay, and we're also increasing the crashes on our system, particularly along the loop of 101. Also, additionally, the transit vehicles using this corridor are showing a decrease in timeliness by at least 2%. So several of the things that we'll be developing as part of this effort is a decision support system. And what's shown on screen is essentially the framework for the DSS, but it's really to use real-time data and predictive modeling to provide the drivers with information, including best detour routes during crashes and other incidents and other events. One of the elements that we'll be incorporating into this effort is adaptive ramp metering. We're actually installing this technology on one of our other freeway corridors now, but essentially it'll enhance, connecting additional vehicle detection so that we can better release the vehicles in a coordinated fashion, both upstream and downstream, to really optimize the flows on the freeways. And then also another element that we'll be incorporating is essentially the connected vehicle applications, and for both transit and incident response vehicles. So we'll be expanding our connected vehicle test bed, which we developed several years back, one of the first early adopters of the CV technology in Anthem up north, and apply that on the Loop 101 corridor to really enhance transit service and support incident response. The equipped connected vehicles will provide signal and timing messaging integrated into the DSS. Oops. My apologies. Also, another element is looking at the adaptive signal control That will be considered to adjust the signal timing and phasing based on real-time traffic patterns and congestion data collected from the sensors on the road. The technology will be especially important during times of major events, including the sporting events, concerts, and other entertainment attractions that occur. It's currently being deployed on one of the corridors here in the Phoenix regions, the Bell Road corridor, and we look to apply that on the Loop 101. And then lastly, the other element as part of the grant is to look at the integrated travel mobility smartphone application to be used to really develop and enhance traveler information and exchange of information. Users will be provided with alerts generated by the DSS with information about crashes and detours and travel times. The mobile app suite will also assist users with physical disabilities to cross the street at crosswalks for users looking for real-time transit information, including schedule and location of connection points. So again, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and we're at the very initial phases of the effort. We're looking to put an RFP out to hire a general consultant to assist with the project management component for the entire project, and we're really kind of planning and further scoping the tasks and subtasks, and also developing the appropriate technical and advisory committees as well. And those have actually been defined, but getting those moved underway. We're also in the final phases of which has taken some time in finalizing all the IJs, as I noted before, with the other agencies, and that takes time to get through their processes as well. So that kind of concludes my presentation. So I'm going to now turn it over to Matt Carlisle with the North Carolina DOT to talk about their ICM, and Matt is actually the state signal system engineer for the DOT there. So Matt, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Brent. All right, appreciate that. So like Brent said, Matthew Carlisle, State Signal System Engineer for North Carolina Department of Transportation, and wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what we're doing in North Carolina related to integrated corridor management. Let's see here. All right. So the first thing I need to talk about is what we define, how we define integrated corridor management. So for us, we consider it to be the integrated and proactive management of existing infrastructure along major corridors. So what that entails is really the coordination of transportation assets as well as all the various stakeholders that are engaged in corridor mobility. And the primary goals of doing that is to give travelers as much information as we can, as early as we can, ensure that all stakeholders have the same information and get it at the same time, respond faster to incidents with predetermined response plans, and to dynamically manage the network based on the demand. So I want to show a little bit, this is a little graphic I'm going to run through typical incident response on a corridor without any ICM initiatives in place. So the first thing is incident occurs and congestion builds along the corridor. That congestion continues to grow, and typically law enforcement arrives on scene around this time. One of the first things they're going to do after they assess the situation is start diverting traffic off of the freeway. Typically, you know, their goal is to get people around the incident and off the freeway in the easiest way that they can, but it's not always going to be a great detour route, and it might be a less than ideal detour route, but that is going to provide some relief. About this time is when the Traffic Management Center is typically either notified of the incident proactively, or we notice it through either observing speed data or CCTV camera coverage. And at that point, we would deploy IMAP, which is our Incident Management Assistance Patrol or Safety Service Patrol. We would start deploying our traveler information through our Traveler Information Management System, or TIMS. Also the same thing on 511. We would push the information out to Waze and Twitter, and we would start putting it on our DMS signs in the area. Again, that's going to provide some more relief. At this point, we would plan a viable detour route. This is something that, you know, if it's not something that we've planned ahead of time, then we're going to have to work through and figure out what is the best detour, and it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to give directions on the detour to tell people how, what turns to take and how to get back to the freeway. So typically we have a couple pages on a DMS sign to tell people how to get off the freeway and get back on it, which is not ideal. But again, it's going to provide some more relief. Rotation wrecker will arrive. They are typically paid by the hour, so they do not really have an incentive to clear the incident very quickly, which is not ideal. And then finally, if it's an area where we are in a municipality on that detour route, maybe have signal systems that they have access to, they can reactively adjust timing to some of those signals to help flush the detour traffic through. One more piece that's going to provide some relief. So this is certainly much better than no response at all, but we can go a level above this, which is our ICM implementation. So I'm going to go through that same sort of sequence of events again on a corridor that does have ICM. So again, it starts out the same. Incident occurs, congestion begins to build. Pretty much as soon as we get to step 2 is where we start to see things be a little bit different. So police department's going to arrive on the scene, but you see right there, now they're going to notify the TMC, and that's part of the stakeholder, making sure everybody's on the same page. So we would likely have MOUs in place so that if we're in an ICM corridor, local law enforcement or highway patrol know one of the first things they need to do after they assess the situation is to notify the TMCs what's going on. Next, TMC deploys traveler information in IMAP. This is similar as it would be without ICM, but hopefully we're getting to this point much quicker because we're getting that proactive notification as soon as law enforcement is on the scene. In this case, we would be notifying a contract record. So what we're doing on some of our efforts is having contract records with monetary incentives to clear the incidents quicker. And we would also be notifying the municipal staff. And that, again, is at the very least, we're notifying the municipal staff so they know and understand what's going on. And at the most, maybe because in one of these later steps, you'll see how they were potentially additionally involved. Next, we're going to go ahead and execute our planned detour routes, alternates, and signal timing plans. So this is, in an ICM corridor, we're going to have all of this predetermined, pre-developed. So there's, it's not quite the easy button. My boss, Jennifer Portanova, really likes to refer to everything by the easy button, and I think down the road we're going to get there. But this is at least a half measure of having everything already planned out. It's just a matter of instituting it. And this is going to provide much more relief than a typical effort. Then once the contract record does arrive, again, they are not paid by the hour. They have an incentive monetary incentive to clear the incident quicker. So the goals of all this is we have rapid stakeholder notification, coordinated, proactive response, a more efficient use of our network, and really focus on quick clearance. So the goals are to get notified quicker, get some relief out there quicker, and to really shorten the time span at which we are have either a road closed or lanes closed. So some characteristics of corridors that we deem to be good for an ICM implementation where it might be a good strategy are locations with reoccurring congestion. So this could be due to vehicle crashes, special events, commuter routes, seasonal fluctuations, or construction projects. Also locations that are sensitive to reduced capacity, such as routes that are already operating at, near, or over capacity, and major routes to tourist destinations. So we have a few ICM efforts underway in North Carolina. Let's see if I can get them to show up here. Great. So we have I-40 and I-26 in Asheville out in the western part of the state, I-85 in Gaston County, there in the sort of central part of the state near Charlotte, Business 40, which is in Winston-Salem near Greensboro, and the I-40 Fortify project, which is in Raleigh. Except for the I-85 Gaston County project, all of these ICM initiatives are really companion projects to major construction projects. So we may have some multiple $100 million interstate widening project, and we're attacking, maybe a couple $1 million worth of additional operational costs on there for these ICM initiatives that are going to help both during the construction and in perpetuity for that area. But the project that I'm going to talk about in a little more detail is the I-85 in Gaston County project there on the west side of Charlotte, which is our first and only so far standalone ICM project. So the scope of this project is I-85 on the west side of Charlotte. This is between US 74, which is exit 10, and Little Rock Road, which is exit 32. It's about a 20-mile stretch of I-85, and one of the another needed characteristic for a good ICM project is a good alternate route. So in this case, the blue is the I-85 section I'm talking about, and the red is US 74, which is a great parallel route. And this is, the US 74 route is 4 to 6 lanes, median divided in some places. It goes through many municipalities. It's mostly signalized. It obviously cannot move quite the volume of traffic that I-85 can, but it is used by commuters when there isn't an incident on I-85, and it's certainly used by everyone when there is an incident on I-85. There's also a future widening project on I-85 to mention, about a 10-mile section there in the middle. So why did we choose this piece of I-85 in North Carolina and Gaston County? So going back through this list of areas that we want to look at ICM, areas that have vehicle crashes, for a 3-mile section of I-85 here between exits 26 and 29, we had about 1,100 crashes in 5 years. Special events, Charlotte has NASCAR racetrack, NFL team, NBA team, college events, music venues. There are lots of special events that I-85 is used as a major in and out of Charlotte to get to. Commuter routes, there's a tremendous AM peak influx eastbound into Charlotte on I-85, and then PM westbound out of Charlotte. Construction projects, I mentioned that major widening project set to begin in 2021 for I-85, and there are several others in the area in the years coming after that. Routes currently operating at or near capacity. This section of I-85 consistently ranks in our top 10 bottlenecks statewide. And then again, as I mentioned, major commuter route. So it was a good candidate for us. So some of the initial challenges that we're going to have, likely with any ICM project, but certainly one of this magnitude, 20 miles of this interstate, we have multiple groups involved. So we have about a half dozen or so municipalities along this stretch of 85 and US 74. They have their own local police agencies. Some of them have their own local transportation staff. We have the highway patrol. We have the various pieces of NCDOT that are involved, as well as the various pieces of NCDOT IMAP that is involved. And currently there's no really clear delineation of our roles and responsibilities, and there's no good policy for us to coordinate with one another. We have decent camera and DMS coverage in the area, but it is not adequate to support ICM strategies. That's another issue that we have. And then one of the other major issues is our signal systems in the area are not timed efficiently to support US 74 as a detour route for I-85, and we do not have remote access to the signals. There's about 94 signals in this 20-mile stretch of US 74. So, stakeholder engagement. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different stakeholders in place. So this project is underway. We haven't constructed anything yet, but we've been planning it. We've been in the planning and design phase for several months. We've had many stakeholder meetings. We make sure that we get all the DOT staff involved. So that's our field staff of Divisions 10 and 12, their IMAP drivers and other staff, our local and statewide TMC. So we have a statewide traffic management center in Raleigh that is highly involved, as well as a regional one in Charlotte. We have our highway patrol, local police and responders, and the municipal transportation agencies, as well as federal highways. So we are working on MOUs to coordinate our roles and responsibilities, our communication plans. We're working on tag and removing abandoned vehicles on I-85, as well as quick clearance, which will give immediate removal for non-injury and non-fatal incidents, which will remove the liability for responders. So again, our hope is to, when an incident occurs, get it cleared as quickly as possible, but before it's cleared, to get some response on the ground even quicker, and to have that response be more sufficient than typical. Some of the things that we're doing with the money, with the CMAX funds that we got for this project, like I mentioned, this is a standalone project. We're not using construction funds to do this. We applied for and were granted some CMAX funding. So we are working on designing efficient timing plans, essentially signal system flush plans for the various alternate route options, as well as the hardware upgrades necessary to have remote access to those signals. So that's to get these 94 signals on our statewide Centrax centrally managed signal system. We're also working on some additional DMS signs for ID5, static and dynamic trailblazing signs for US 74, which is going to help us actually guide the detour traffic along the detours and show them where to get back onto the interstate. Additional cameras for the city of Gastonia, which is the major municipality in the middle of this 20-mile stretch, and additional cameras for ID5 as well. So like I said, there are 94 signals on US 74 and the corresponding ID5 interchanges. We're working on timing plans, updated timing plans for the normal conditions, and also when US 74 is used as a detour route. We're going to be using our DMS signs to warn motorists and advise of detours and alternate routes, both the static and dynamic trailblazing signs to provide directions along the detour routes. We will be installing additional fender bender signs, which advise motorists to move any non-injury crash to the shoulder to try to keep our travel lanes open, and then additional cameras which will help us detect and monitor the incidents, as well as sharing video feeds between stakeholders. So we hope to be able to share our existing video feeds and additional video feeds with the other municipalities and stakeholders involved in this project. And finally, our response plans, the goals of these response plans will be to specifically describe who responds and how, who to notify and when, which detour and alternate routes to use, which signs to use and what messages to display on them, and what signal timing plan to use. So we've developed 12 response plans for this 20-mile stretch. We have 6 eastbound, or I guess I should say northbound, and 6 southbound. And for each one of those, we know, hey, if an incident occurs here, here are the signs that are going to get messages, here are the messages that are going to go on the signs. This is what direction the various dynamic trailblazing signs are going to have. These are the messages we're going to put up on TIMS and on 511. And these are the signal timing plans that we're going to be putting in place, as well as who we're going to notify and keeping everybody all in the loop. And the next steps for this project, we're going to continue having stakeholder meetings. We actually have one tomorrow, developing standard operating procedures and training modules for when we get ready to actually implement and put this initiative into place, making sure that we train all the various staff how to do everything that needs to be done. We're already working on the design, and we hope to let the construction in hopefully spring of next year, so another 6 months or so, we're hoping to start actually constructing some of these improvements, and targeted for completion, I believe, fall of 2019. So with that, I think I'm done. I can answer any questions at the end of everybody else's presentations, or if you think of some after this, you're welcome to either contact myself or my supervisor, Jennifer Portanova. Her email address is right there, and I will pass it back to Brent. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for the presentation. Very good. Again, if you have any questions, we'll hold off until the end, as Matthew noted, but if you have, feel free to type in through the chat box on screen as well, too. So up next, we've got Subrat, who's the Deputy Director, TSMO Program Manager for the Maryland DOT. So Subrat, you're up.
Thank you, Brent. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, I can. Yep.
Perfect. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. Again, I wanted to start by thanking Brent and the NOCOE for this opportunity to become part of this dialogue. Again, great presentations so far. I wanted to build off the current presentations that we already heard, but I wanted to take a step back and connect the ICM pieces with a broader program, and that's what we are focusing here in Maryland. So to set the stage, I'll just give a little preview of where we are, what our drivers are, and what are the connections for ICM implementations in Maryland. Again, as probably folks would know, we are a small northeast mid-Atlantic state. 42nd in size, but anyone who has traveled to the Baltimore-Washington region knows how dense and populous it is. So it's 19th in population, 6th in population density. Again, we have a little bit of everything in Maryland, whether it's the Eastern Shore side of things with and also the Western Appalachian region and the Central Maryland, the Baltimore-Washington region. So again, a host of challenges, opportunities that comes along us being a small state, and again, tightly tied to the broader Washington, D.C. region. So about Maryland DOT, again, we are, our structure is somewhat interesting. Again, we are kind of structured around the structure of US DOT for folks who would know. Again, we have the Secretary's office that sets the overall vision, but again, we have the State Highway Administration, the Transit Administration, Port Administration, Motor Vehicles, Aviation. So there is a lot of multimodal components that are part of our existing DOT structure. And the MDOT Accelerator is our business plan. So we take our performance measures approach towards delivering customer service, whether it's in the capital side of things or whether it's the operation side of things. Again, this unique multimodal organizational framework is very conducive for integrated corridor management programs. A little bit about MDOT State Highway Administration, MDOT SHA. We own and maintain the tolled interstates, the tolled routes, and non-toll routes, 17,000 lane miles and 2,600 bridges. We manage 17% of the system, but roughly 65, two-thirds of the VMT, and roughly 80% of the truck VMT happen on Maryland system, on the DOT system. Again, because congestion and reliability are huge challenge areas in this, there is a huge emphasis on transportation systems management and operations, TISMO. And we see TISMO is a key component for ICM is a key strategy for establishing a successful TISMO program in Maryland and moving forward. So here are some current trends, and these are trends that we already talked about in other jurisdictions, other parts of the country, where you have a lot of socioeconomic activity driving that has parallel systems, freeway arterial systems that serve travel demand, truck demand. So in our state, our VMT is at all-time high levels. From a high commuting standpoint, we are second in the nation because there is a lot of commuting that happens across state lines to DC, folks from Pennsylvania traveling to Maryland, so on and so forth. And you look at those national reports where you see the Baltimore-Washington region constantly featuring the most congested regions in the country. And there is a direct correlation between congestion levels and oversaturated conditions, so and unreliability. So something small happens, it sends shock waves, and that causes a lot of unreliability. So the whole point of all this is to establish that we can't build our way out. Congestion is going to increase in coming years when the projections are saying that there will be 1 million more people in the coming 20 years, and the VMT is going to be 1/3 on top of what we already have, and freight truck VMT is going to double. So with those staggering statistics, it behooves on us through TISMO and ICM, we plan out. So there are some major initiatives that has used ICM opportunities in Maryland. So what you see in here is our strategic plan and how it connects to TISMO. Our chart, Incident Management and Traveler Advisory Program, is our default ICM TISMO program. But again, there are some major projects underway in our region, whether it's the P3 initiatives, it's a $8 billion initiative that the governor had announced that looks at incorporating toll lanes on Capital Beltway and I-270 that carries about 200,000, 250,000 vehicles any given day. But there are also some TISMO and ICM projects and smart signal corridor project investments, roughly $500 million over the coming 3 to 5 years that are making its way, which we see has huge TISMO opportunities. So what is our TISMO program and how does it tie with ICM? I'll spend a minute or two on this slide. So the TISMO program offers us this integrated approach where we are looking at the total project lifecycle from concept to operations. So looking at planning, engineering, operations, and maintenance as one throughout the lifecycle of a project or a program, and to make sure that it ties into the safety, security, and reliability of the transportation system. So we are rolling out our second edition of our TISMO plan in October, sometime later this month. And if you look at our strategic plan, it calls for 4 goal areas. Goal 1 talks about the business processes and collaboration. Goal 2 talks about systems and technology. Goal 3 talks about data analysis, performance management. And goal 4 talks about the customer experience and engagement. So the whole idea is through business processes, technology, systems, we are taking a performance-based approach to manage our system and manage our corridors. And again, if you look at the ICM construct, it lends very well into this construct where you're looking at those collaborations across multiple stakeholders. You are availing technology and systems to manage travel demand and traffic on corridors, parallel routes and feeder routes, and you're taking a performance-based approach and you're engaging the customers as part of the solution to travel demand management strategies. So here are some of the TISMO initiatives that are going on in the state as we speak that enables ICM in our region. So whether it's the CHART incident management traveler advisory programs, I talked about some of the capital improvements that are ongoing, but also our signal systems upgrades, the park and ride facilities, the HOV lanes, the managed lanes, the bicycle pedestrian network. So all these programs under the TISMO umbrella are coming together to provide us solutions on TISMO and integrated corridor management. A little bit on our CHART program. It is a robust 30-year-old program. We are very proud of it. It's one of the national leaders when it comes to incident management technology. But the major side of things that if you ask CHART program managers would say is the success is also very much dependent on the institutional partnerships that we have built over these years with enforcement, emergency authority, and our customers and elected officials and everyone else. So the whole idea is we have these institutional arrangements, the agreements, and the formal procedures that we can leverage to build our next generation ICM. And again, some factoids that looks at our annual user cost savings, which is $1.5 billion every year because of our incident management and traveler information systems. So this is borrowing from the federal highway definition. We are looking at integrated corridor management as a comprehensive idea where we connect all the agencies and stakeholders. And then we are looking at travel sets, origins and destinations and markets to see what are the opportunities in which we can make travel possible, whether it's through roadways, transit, rail lines, and other options. And management is jointly looking at these shared objectives. Over the past few years, we have had, through federal highway grants and through some of our own efforts, we have developed concept of operations on 2 corridors, I-270 as part of the first generation of ICM pilots that went out. We did a concept of operations as part of that, working with Montgomery County DOT and other partners. And very recently, we completed a concept of operations on I-95. You would see an inset map of the I-95 corridor. Again, you would see the Capital Beltway on the bottom half and the Baltimore Beltway on the top half, and then there are these corridors, I-95, US 29, US 1, and Baltimore-Washington Parkway connecting these corridors where a majority of travel happens, not only intrastate, but a lot of interstate travel also happens through this corridor. Huge freight movement is also part of it. And these pilots provided this framework, and we have taken lessons from this pilot to develop some broader guidelines for our next generation of ICM projects. So again, at the core of it is integration, whether it's institutional integration, operational integration, or technical integration. Integration at all levels is a key component for a successful ICM program. And again, these are your standard goals where you are trying to improve the mobility throughput and travel reliability of the corridor in question. You are trying to improve the safety and incident responses, disseminate reliable real-time information to your customers and stakeholders, and promote multimodalism and demand management as well. And in the end, what we hear from our stakeholders and partners loud and clear, in the end, it's about connecting people with life's opportunities. That's part of our mission. But it's, again, how do we make sure that it's about connecting people and goods movement from point A to point B, and economic vitality and sustainability and quality of life comes from various stakeholders as key message areas, which we try to incorporate in our programs. And from a technology standpoint, what we also see is it's about capacity management through active traffic management strategies, also active travel demand management side of things that overall leads to a successful integrated corridor management program. So we take these broader goal areas and integration angles to develop this construct. So from a capacity management perspective, these are the portfolio of strategies that we employ, that we plan to employ in coming years with the new projects, upcoming projects, whether it's the smart signal initiatives, speed harmonization, managed lanes, ETLs, HOVs, RAM metering, junction controls, again, building upon the incident management and traveler information systems that we already have, but also looking at dynamic lane controls, dynamic shoulder use, so on and so forth. So you're getting the most out of active traffic management strategies. So when vehicles and trucks are on the traffic stream, you are looking at the system and connecting point A to point B. On the demand management strategies, we are taking, again, there are short-term action items that we continue to take through our multimodal programs and working with our MPO partners and our major employers. So it could be providing real-time multimodal traveler information, working with the university, research center, and other partners, private sectors as well, promote carpooling, park and ride infrastructure, smart parking, transit connections, and also looking at telework, flex work opportunities, and also looking at our freight delivery systems and policies that go alongside it. And in the long term, we know that it's about the transportation land use connections, and building that non-motorized transportation infrastructure goes a long way along that. And also looking into the CAV infrastructure for shared autonomous vehicles, the new the TNCs, ride-hailing, ride-sharing opportunities that are there. So from a demand management in all, we are looking at 4 types of decision making. Can we have a say on the destination side of things? That's the long term, where people live and where they choose to work. Can we provide or incentivize travel for departure time? So as opposed to the peak of peak hour, people are willing to travel during the shoulder hours, which helps manage the demand on our systems. Can we influence the modal choice by parking systems, by other modes of transportation, active transportation, so on and so forth? And can we provide information that enables route choice? So if there is congestion on main line, something happens on arterials, how do you manage demand as well? So those are the things that we are looking on the supply side and also on the demand side for ICM. And this is a high-level design of the ATMS and the decision support system that feeds an ICM. So in the end, we are gravitating towards a virtual ICM traffic management center depending on the stakeholders. And then that feeds, you have travelers on one end, you have the transportation management agencies and stakeholders, and then you have web developers, API, the private sector, applications, media, that all work together with clear roles and responsibilities to build up upon this ecosystem, if you may, that we can move forward with. So this is the high-level design that we are looking at. It is like, how do we build a system of systems and engage the right players at the right point with clear roles and responsibilities. Again, we realize this is a continuous improvement cycle. Even in the last couple of years, technology is moving so fast that we can't, one solution cannot fit it all, and we have to be on top of it. But if we have figured out that if you have a good, solid framework of operating and clear roles and responsibilities identified and the institutional arrangements to go alongside with, that those are recipes for a successful TISMO program. So we are recognizing continuous improvement, whether it's projects in the design phases, planning phases, and construction phases. They all are part of that ecosystem, and including innovations and CAVs as we move forward. The institutional framework, again, building upon the success that we have had with our partners and stakeholders, there is a steering board that has representations from the DOT partners, our transportation business units, the local DOTs, planning agencies, the MPOs, again, the first responders, the transit operators, and the other communities that you see in here. So the steering board provides that overarching vision. We have the chart board that serves as a steering board, but again, the idea is as you roll out these ICM corridors on different systems, these steering boards is the larger governing body that helps in moving these projects and programs, and decisions are made on a policy and program level. Again, the previous presentation from North Carolina talked about some operational scenarios. So as part of our concept of operations for I-95 and the past projects, we look at a variety of operational scenarios to identify that all stakeholders have clearly identified roles and responsibilities. We describe various scenarios starting from normal conditions to stress conditions, failure events, so on and so forth, to basically have a clear line of communication on what triggers the sequence, who or what performs each step, when communications occur to whom or what. So these are the details that we document as part of our concept of operations for our corridors. Again, looking at the success performance measure, performance management is the way to go. So again, from a TISMO standpoint, ICM standpoint, what we are looking at, accessibility and connectivity measures, multimodal trip reliability measures, the market segments that we serve on. So these go beyond the traditional B by C level of service, PTI measures. You're taking a slightly different angle to it. You're looking at origin to destinations, and that's at the heart of the ICM programs is, are you connecting markets, businesses, people, and jobs, job centers through a connected transportation network? And this is where these user-centric performance, next generation performance measures are helping us getting there. We are very fortunate to having the partnerships with the University of Maryland. We do a lot of in-house applications as well. The whole idea is using data technologies and the systems over many, many years and hooking that to decision support systems, we are moving forward. And the analysis, modeling, and simulation is a key component of any ICM program. So we have built these tools that could feed into a decision support systems to look at these operational scenarios and looking at how the system performs, and then looking at past data to see what we learned from them, and it's a continuous improvement cycle. So from a deployment approaches, we are going to invest in our active traffic management infrastructure. We are continuing to build upon our TISMO program, but going multimodal and build upon the demand management strategies that are already there, but also looking at other business models like incentivizing travelers. The CMAX model, the funding opportunities came in the previous presentation. So building on existing funding structures, institutional arrangements, we want to go to that next level. So with that, again, I thank you for the opportunity to share our work, and after the presentations, we would love to hear questions and comments.
Very good. Excuse me. Thank you, Subrat. Very good presentation. So again, I noticed there's activity with the chat box, which is fantastic to see. And then we'll hold all questions to the end. So our next speaker, Natalie Becker, I appreciate you coming on and talking about your ICM and for North Central Texas Council of Governments, and you are the Senior Program Manager there. So Natalie, the floor is all yours.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon. So I'm coming from a little bit different perspective than the other presenters. I work for the North Central Texas Council of Governments. We're the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we kind of approach things a little bit differently just because we don't operate any of the transportation system that's out there. So we really have to take a little bit different approach than states do when it comes to TISMO activities and how we go about getting that implemented within our region. So really quickly, the Dallas-Fort Worth region, our planning area is a 12-county planning area. It's over 9,000 square miles, so it is a very large area that we have to coordinate with. And probably the most challenging part of it is the number of stakeholders that we have within our region that operate our system. And so within the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have over 209 cities. 13 of those cities are larger than 100,000 in population. Our current population in the region is 7 million, and we are estimated to grow to 11 million by 2045. So we have, again, our main focus is how do we best utilize and operate the system that we have, which is really the emphasis behind TISMO within our region, is we want to take what we have and make sure it operates to the best of its ability and make sure travelers on our system know the best options that work for them. And so that's really the emphasis behind a lot of what we do in the area of TISMO. There is a large component of our transportation system which deal with managed lanes within our region, and this is really those lanes within the corridor themselves. We have freeway lanes on the outside with the managed lanes within that corridor where tolls are applied to those lanes to help with the demand of the system and to keep the traffic flowing within those managed lanes themselves. Within our region, we have about 5,500 lane miles of freeways and tollways. We have over 300 lane miles of high occupancy vehicle and managed lanes. And then for the primary arterials and frontage roads, we have over 9,600 lane miles, and we have over 6,000 traffic signals in our region. So the other unique thing is each city within our region, over 50,000, operates the traffic signals. And so we have to deal with lots of different municipalities along these corridors. So TxDOT and the Tollway Authority operate our freeway and tollway facilities, but along those facilities, the signals on the frontage roads are operated by the local cities. And so it's very critical that we get them involved and we get their buy-in to, again, help traffic move within our region. And I'll talk a little bit about how we go about doing that from an MPO perspective. So again, with a little bit different approach than the other folks, we've kind of taken a multi-pronged approach of how we go about the implementation of TISMO and get our partner agencies on board and understand the importance of TISMO and us being able to work together as partners to better operate the system that we have. we had started an integrated corridor management program on the US 75 corridor. This was actually led by our transit agency, the Dallas Area Rapid Transit, and we completed that project in terms of, we completed the completion report, but there's still activities that are going on along that particular corridor. And that particular corridor was selected just because of the functions that it has and the different modes that it has available along that corridor. It has an HOV lane, it has general purpose lanes, it has frontage roads. It also has a transit line that runs parallel to that, and it also has a toll road that's about 5 miles away from that corridor that could be used as an alternate route for that facility. Through that exercise of that, evaluating that corridor with our partner agencies, our region did learn a lot, and we continue to implement many of those strategies on other corridors as we move forward. In terms of what I'm going to cover, again, we're looking at it a little bit differently. I'm going to talk a little bit about policies and resolutions that we set up on a regional level to, again, build consistency on how we operate the system. We do offer some traffic incident management training programs. What are we doing in transportation operations? Demand management is another key area, which Maryland's doing a lot with that. And then what funding do we set aside to really bring folks to the table? And then how do we organize ourselves as working groups and task force to really begin to better operate our system within the region and coordinate across these multiple operators? In terms of resolutions and policies, a lot of what we do from an MPO perspective is we take resolutions to our policy board, which is made up of elected officials from across the region. So those elected officials help us get buy-in from the local agencies within our region. So as you can see here, there's been resolutions associated with freeway incident management programs, again, to coordinate that, attend our training that we offer out there, look at best practices, as well as look at ways to better get incidents cleared more quickly. So that's a resolution that was adopted by our Regional Transportation Council, as well as we asked local agencies to adopt that. Another approach that we took, which was more of a carrot, I guess, if you want to look at it from a carrot versus a stick, is we have a long-range transportation plan, which we refer to as our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. During the last go-around, we came up with these policy bundles, and the policy bundles are about 20 different policies that focus on anything from clean fleet vehicles to stormwater management to railroad safety, but there are some within this bucket that deal with TSMO type of activities, and those include the integration of traffic operations, traffic incident management, and the implementation of employer trip reduction programs. Well, the carrot behind this is if an agency, cities within our region, meet half of these eligible policies, they're able to use transportation development credits to match their federally funded projects. And so this enables us to push some of these policies and get the local agencies thinking out of their traditional ways of thinking and engaged in TSMO activity, as well as other good air quality and planning practices within our region. And so we really utilize that as a way to engage them and encourage them to participate in these programs. And it has really helped raise their awareness and get them engaged in some of these activities. The other item that we offer is our traffic incident management training. This is something that is offered here at the Council of Governments. We have a regional police academy, and it's offered through that effort. So we have multiple layers to our training itself. We have a first responders and managers course, which is really for those folks, those boots on the ground, those folks that are out there in the field doing this every day. And that's a 2-day course. We complement that with an executive level course with the decision makers, because again, we want to make sure the decision makers buy in. So when those first responders that are out there every day go to them and they need a policy change or a practice change or a protocol change or equipment, these elected officials, executives, can help understand why it's important and why it's needed. The last course that we offer that complements this is photogrammetry training, which is really for the police officers that are out there in the field. This helps from one, the safety perspective, getting them out of the road more quickly because they're able to take pictures and reconstruct the crash in their office, and two, it helps us get our roadways cleared more quickly. All of this training is free to the first responders, and we also utilize it, which you'll see when we offer funding for equipment and software. They have to attend our training classes in order to be eligible to receive that funding. In terms of transportation operations, this is an area that we really focus on multiple elements of it. Frontage road retiming has been a big push within our region. So we've been evaluating which corridors have communication to their traffic signals, continuous frontage roads. We look at crash rates along corridors so we can identify and prioritize which corridors we want to focus on next in terms of implementing and developing predetermined signal timing plans. And that's really with input from our local agencies because they're the ones that operate these systems. And so it's really important that we get their buy-in and they're engaged in that process. Currently, COG hires the consultant to actually do the signal retiming work, and we engage the local agencies that operate the signals as well as the operator of the main lanes, whether it's TxDOT or the Tollway Authority or some of our private sector partners to participate in that discussion. Transit integration, this is really important as we try to integrate better transit into options within a corridor similar to the US 75 corridor. This really is the push that gave us a little bit of an edge to understand how commuters may transfer from one mode to another, how you can encourage them to use transit and not feel like they're stranded if they take it downtown, and how they get back out of town. But this is an area that we do focus on, and we know we still have improvements to make. In terms of data and video sharing, I put sharing on this slide for one reason, because I think our region has done a very good job of sharing data, but it's not integrated in a decision support type of tool that we all work from the same one. And that's really been a challenge, as we have these proprietary back office systems, and sometimes that data is shared, but it's not integrated into the other agency's back office system to allow them to make good decisions about how to make adjustments to what their system is doing and how they control the traffic on that particular route. Messages on dynamic message boards. I think our region has really made a lot of progress with this. I do still think there's room for improvement for showing things like comparative travel speeds by different modes or different routes. We do have a 511 DFW that really came out of the US 75 ICM corridor. And then obviously we want to make sure we share this data with third parties, because we want to reach more and more of the public to educate them on what's going on the route they may be traveling on and how they might divert to another route or another mode. Demand management, which has been brought up as well, is also important to us. And I think many of these items have been discussed. You know, our main focus has been transit options, carpooling and van pooling matching. This is kind of a newer area. It's not just has to be set up, pre-arranged van pool and carpool matching. There are abilities to do that more real time. We've even worked with Waze. They've come into our region and they've implemented a program that allowed folks to do more real-time carpooling, which seems to have been very beneficial. Other things that we're looking at in terms of specified routes, you know, is there a way eventually we have enough data in these integrated systems that we can provide somebody with a specific route we want them to take to help balance that load across our transportation system, and they get some incentive for actually taking that route. We offer incentives for these alternative modes, which I think are important because it gives people an option to change their behavior. And unless we do something that incentivizes them, sometimes it's challenging to get folks out of their comfort zone of driving in their car by themselves. In terms of funding, this is something, you know, we try to work with our partners to implement all this, but as part of that partnership, we feel it's very important that we set aside funding for these efforts. And so you'll see on here, there's lots of funding support that we provide as an MPO to these partner agencies. One is traffic incident management, not just the training, but we provide equipment and technology support, so they submit projects to us. when we fund those projects. We're getting ready to start another call for projects for that. Traffic signal retiming, we do this on frontage roads as well as major arterials within our region, as well as intelligent transportation systems. So we put a lot of money into filling gaps and integrating systems within our region, and that's really our main focus for these funding sources. Moving forward, we've taken an approach of different types of task force. One has been corridor-based, some have been area-based, but we really struggle with the consistency of our corridors within our region. They all operate a little differently, so how do we best organize folks to give us feedback and come up with policies as well as the types of projects that need to be funded? This is the latest version of our individual corridor committee structure that's being proposed to better look at how we integrate these into a corridor, and then we visualize these corridor groups would then feed into more of a regional policy and funding group. So again, it's to capture some of this low-hanging fruit that's out there that we feel can have a huge impact on how we operate our systems, and it's just a matter of coming up with a consistent way to implement that. Kind of summarizing, I guess, lessons learned that we've learned here from an MPO perspective is training that we offer has changed mindsets. I think it's just really opened people's eyes to see that there is some things, small things we can do that really makes a difference on how our transportation system is operated and how quickly we get to and respond to crashes. Funding, again, we bring funding to the table. That's really a lot of what we do to entice our partners into participating in TSMO activities. Other things that I think we really need to work on is being more consistent across our jurisdictional lines, and again, I think that's where that regional task force comes into play. We're collecting performance measures, but are they all consistent by each agency that's collecting those? What is our consistency in abandoned vehicles and tow truck operators? We have a different tow truck for every city within our region, and getting them to have consistent response times is challenging. You know, how we operate our signal systems and transit integration. We have multiple transit partners. There's lots of things that we can do a better job being more consistent and sharing and integrating our data with one another. And so that's really a lot of what we've learned working through these TSMO activities and looking at some ways we can try to improve as we move forward. So that concludes my presentation. I'll turn it back over to Brent.
Natalie, thank you so much. Great presentation as well, too. So I appreciate the different perspective coming from a COG or MPO, so that's always helpful. I don't know if anybody else has just had challenges. I just lost connectivity with the web, but it's looking like it's loading back up. But I noticed there's been some posts on the chat, and I guess like Natalie, the last one, and Matthew's responded to the earlier ones from Neil, but there is one for you, Natalie. I can read it. Slide 9 indicates activities that exist to inform motorists of options. How are these options delivered to the motorist in the immediacy of an event? I would endorse that a DSS exists that already has permissions to display messages, inform the media, to inform the public, and otherwise provide alternative route and mode choice in real time.
Yeah, so currently, which I think there's definitely room for improvement in this area for us, but our current way to disseminate this information and options to the motorist is through our 511 DFW system, as well as the information that we share with third parties. So we share that real time with third party app developers like Waze and Google and those folks, and so hopefully people are getting that information and are able to make decisions. We do need to work a little bit more on our message displays. Like I mentioned, we provide messages on travel time from your current location to where you're going, but we don't necessarily have, we currently are not showing comparative travel times across the corridor, meaning the freeway lanes, the managed lanes, the frontage roads, the transit line that might run parallel to that. We currently have not displayed them in that manner, but it is something that we want to do. So again, the commuter can make educated choices of what works best for them.
Very good. Thank you. I guess let's open up for just questions overall. Nilu, is it something you can open it up to everybody to ask? Do others have questions for the panel?
I can unmute. I mean, if people want to talk over the phone, they can press star and then pound. That should unmute them, but feel free to use the chat bot as well.
Okay. So with that being said, I guess it seems like the chat's the best way to at least push a question out, or easiest, I should say. Does anybody on the line have any questions for the panel? Maybe they can respond via the chat.
Brent, while people are thinking and typing questions, I didn't know that Matt wanted to add anything to his response to the first question that we had.
Hey, this is Matt. Not unless anybody has any follow-up questions, but yeah, we do have, for those that might not have read it, Neil Spiller had asked how we defined our measures of success for the ID5 ICM project, and I don't think we've exactly defined that yet, but we have a research project underway with ITRI, Institute for Transportation Research and Education at NC State, which will evaluate the effectiveness of the project. We were supposed to have our kickoff meeting for that project about a month ago, but then Hurricane Florence came through and we haven't gotten it back on our calendars just yet. But I mentioned that it will, I believe, largely be based on vehicle probe data and travel time analysis, and what we would hope to see is that queue lengths and travel times and incident clearance times are improved post-implementation when compared to pre-implementation. So we can, using that historic vehicle probe data, go through and look at a similar incident from before we had ICM in place and after we had it in place, and see what the travel times and other metrics are along the surrounding network, especially the typical detour routes. Let's see, there was also a question from Natalie about the time frame that triggers the detour. I'm not sure that I understand that question, but in terms of the triggers for it, again, we're still working. That's something that hasn't yet been completely hammered out for this specific project. We have a similar ICM project in Winston-Salem that doesn't have all the same pieces, but it has probably 3/4 of the pieces. And for that, it's a combination of things. It's kind of a decision matrix, but it's a combination of time of day that an incident occurs, whether it closes one lane, 2 lanes, or an entire direction, what piece of the 10 or 15 mile stretch it is on. I think those are the main triggers. Obviously, if we have an incident that closes one lane at 2 in the morning, we may not need to do anything above and beyond typical versus a full closure at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So those are some of the triggers.
Matt, this is Brent. I do have a question. Others are typing in as well too. It looks like the cost estimate. You're using CMAX funds for the I-85. Just curious of what you're looking at to develop that ICM funding-wise.
That's a great question, Brent, and I wish I could tell you more, but unfortunately, when the CMAQ application and everything was put in, that was prior to my involvement in the project. So I don't, off the top of my head, okay. I'm not sure exactly what we used or the dollar amount. I apologize.
That's okay. All right. Thank you. So, question from Ralph Volpe. Excellent presentations by all. Matt, I did like your dynamic explanation of ICM and no ICM, slides 3 and 4. are you in a position to share the actual slides to really tell that story?
Do you mean just sharing those presentation slides with you?
Great question.
Probably means like the PowerPoint version versus PDF.
Oh, right, sure. Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that. It's not, copyrighted material or anything like that.
Okay. I'll include
And
the website.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
next question, Mosammed. What are the measures that you are thinking for arterial incidents? I guess like that's probably directed at you, Matt?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I didn't really talk about incidents on the arterial routes. I mean, what we're talking about are really the incidents on the freeways, and then we would be detouring to arterial routes. So I'm not sure that I can address that one.
Okay. Mosammed, maybe if you could clarify again. Next one's from Neil Spiller. We at FHWA headquarters are speaking. Where are there other new initiatives of ICM being considered in the country? As part of our national ICM program, if you are new in emerging ICM region, we would love to hear from you. Maybe visit and share some lessons learned from our national demo projects in San Diego and Dallas and elsewhere. Is more of a comment from Neil. Thank you. And then Ralph responded back to your response.
Yeah, that's no problem. I can email those directly to you, Ralph. Thanks.
Looks like we have another question coming in.
And again, if you feel like posing your question orally on the phone, you can press *# and that should unmute you to ask your question.
Natalie, this is Subrat. I have a question for you about your incentivizing the travel options. Is that funded through CMAX or where does the funding come from?
Yeah, currently we're funding it through our CMAC, our Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Funds, is how we fund our Try Parking It program, which is, it includes incentives to folks that get in there and log their commute.
So are you looking at smartphone apps and things like that? Because there are a few services out there from what I could tell.
We are looking at smartphone apps. We're getting ready to go out for a new procurement on that, in which we'll add some additional items related to smartphone apps, the ability to, I guess, confirm a type of mode somebody is taking. Because right now our system is more of a voluntary system, so somebody gets in there and they self-declare what they did. And so we want to, one, offer more incentives, and two, make sure that we validate that they actually took the mode and the trip that they said they did.
Thanks, Natalie.
Okay, we've got one from Stephen Levine. Excellent presentations. When does each site, I assume that's state maybe, I'm not for sure. When does each site expect to progress with developing the DSS?
This is Subrat from Maryland. I can take a quick stab at it. I think we, as I cited in my presentation, we are taking a stepped approach from an active traffic management towards a demand management systems towards an integrated corridor management system. So some of the DSS that are being worked on through our existing ICM projects, the congestion management projects are more on the active traffic management side of things. But we are looking at parallel corridors, at least from a traffic standpoint, so we can look at diversions and load balancing on freeways and arterials.
Okay. And I guess like from Arizona's perspective is that, we're obviously developing ours with our Loop 101, understanding that there's other areas throughout the U.S., San Diego, Dallas, obviously it has a very robust DSS. but I think others are looking to develop, hopefully it's scalable per se, to really utilize a DSS system or DSS. Ralph Fulfy, besides CMAX funding, are there any other federal aid funds to support various activities associated with ICM? Trying to think of other federal aid. Go ahead.
Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, we use those funds in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that also could be used for ICM type or TSMO type of projects.
And some of the preliminary planning activities are getting funded through the SPR planning budgets in Maryland as well. We are using both federal and state SPRs.
Okay. From Neil Spiller, Matt, not on topic, can you have Kelly, I think, or send me a description all about your state's top 10 bottleneck program? I'd love to hear more about those locations, are confirmed, ranked, and addressed.
Yes, I plan to do that.
Okay. All right. I think Ralph's, a couple more, maybe one more is coming in. Okay. So comment from Ralph, thank you, good answers. Like hearing other funds are being used by your agencies besides CMAX. I do know in the Phoenix region are working closely with MAG, which is the Maricopa Association of Governments, our MPO. They're very supportive of implementing ICM, and even though we're starting off with the Loop 101, we are looking at other ICM corridors in the Phoenix region. So, and that funding will be based on more local funds. I don't see any other questions coming in. If you have any questions, either again through the chat or if you just want to throw them out online, that's great. It doesn't look like any. Again, this is being recorded, so Nilu will post this on the NOCO website. I do want to shout out to all the presenters again for taking the time and effort to pulling your presentations together and delivering them as well. Excellent job to all, Matthew, Sabrat, and Natalie. I know it's taken away from other stuff that you're doing, but I think it's also fantastic to share amongst the community across the U.S. So with that, Neela, is there anything else you wanted to close out with other than, thank you for all the participants for attending the webinar?
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you helping out with this webinar and all of you presenting. Also, just all the participants joining us today. That it was great being with you all in this. So that should be it. Again, thank you, and thank you for joining us today. I hope you found it helpful.
Very good.
Thank
all
you,
right.
Neela.
Have a great afternoon,
Thank you.
everybody.
Have a good afternoon. Thank you.